This is the 40-watt garage. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back. We're continuing our little series on rebuilding some Homecrest patio chairs. And I just got them back from my powder coating vendor, and let's take a look and see. I found a local sandblasting outfit that would do the chairs for a reasonable price. There are 6 chairs disassembled. It would be 18 pieces, and the sandblasting service charged me $225 to blast all of these chairs. And what was nice about it is the sandblasting service is familiar with working with powder coaters, and they knew what degree of grit or roughness to leave the parts so that the powder coating would look and work out well. I picked them up from the sandblaster, perfect bare metal, nice and clean, dropped them off to the powder coaters, and then started talking to the powder coater about colors and finishes and things like that. The powder coating vendor I chose tries to use, or I think he may exclusively use, materials, powder from one specific manufacturer, which is probably a good thing. He's familiar with the product, he knows how it behaves. But one thing this powder manufacturer offers is you can order from them samples of different colors and different textures, and they ship to you, and it's the actual powder that has been applied and baked onto small aluminum color chips, about an inch wide and 3 inches long. And you can get 5 of them for about $10. So trying to look up a color for powder coat on your computer is nearly impossible. I mean, it's not going to match. So we wound up ordering 2 sets of samples, and then in total 10 color chips, and then decided on this particular color. Now, one of the nice things that my powder coating vendor does is he purchased my 10 color samples back from me, or credited my job with the cost of those 10 color samples. So now he has them available at his shop for other customers to sample and look at. So that worked out well. So essentially the color chips didn't cost me a thing other than time. I believe he said that this job, which was 6 chairs, 18 pieces, took every bit of 4 pounds of powder. And the powder varies in cost between about $11 and $20 a pound, depending on what you choose. And they turned out absolutely beautiful. You would never know that these pieces, these chairs, are almost 40 years old. They look brand new. One of the great things about powder coating is it's electrostatic, so it'll flow in and cling in and behind things. You could never get back in and inside there and in these recesses with spray paint. And it is bonded onto there. This stuff is incredibly durable and hard to remove. So I'm very pleased with the way these turned out. Powder coater, including materials, came out to be about $110 per chair. To replace these chairs new is about $800 each. You can see why we chose to get them reconditioned. So let's assemble some chairs. These are the parts needed to rebuild the swivel mechanism on these Homecrest chairs. There is the swivel rebuild kit which is right here. It includes a new bearing race, ball bearings, washers and spacers, the securing bolt, nut, and safety pin. And that is part number 406410, which I think is universal for all of their swivel type chairs, but you have to go to the website and verify that. And then I have 6 of these for each chair, and they're kind of the fish mouth cut rubbery plastic buttons that go into these holes. They call them glides in Homecrest speak. They hammer into those holes there. So let's get to rebuilding the swivel mechanism. And you'll need one of these kits and however many of these glides for the bases of your chair. So I think I wound up with 36 of the glides and 6 hardware kits for the swivels. One of the things that they stress or recommend is these are like rebuild kits, and they're not anticipating the chairs being completely stripped and cleaned and stuff. But so they, in the instructions, they recommend remove the old ball bearings and nylon retaining ring. Do not wipe out the grease, as grease is needed for internal lubrication. Add additional grease as necessary, available at any hardware store. And I'm sure that all general purpose grease or an automotive wheel bearing grease or chassis grease would work fine. I'm going to use some of this 2,4-C Mercury Marine lubricant. It's a high pressure grease that works well, and especially in wet environments. And so I'm just going to squeeze a small amount out into that groove, and it'll sit in there. And that's about all it's going to take. Lay the bearing race in on top of there like that. Open up our parts, and we put a ball bearing in each of the holes. And one thing I ran into or noticed was that these bolts that are supplied by Homecrest, they must have this safety pin hole drilled in after the fact. And unfortunately, the threads get a little buggered. So I am going to run a die over this to clean up the threads. If you don't have a threading die or a thread chasing die, you could probably just as easily run the nut up and down and clean these threads. But as you can see right now, by hand, I can't get the nut past that safety pin hole. So the threads are a little buggered. So let's clean these threads up. Okay, I have my soft jaws in the vise. These are plastic inserts because I don't want to clamp down on the steel jaws and damage the bolt. So these are plastic soft jaws. And I really shouldn't have to grip it very hard to keep it from turning, but I need. And this is a 3/8 thread, which I've got the 3/8 die in my wrench. Get it started on there. I'm just, you can see right there, just with finger pressure, the threading die jams up. And it jams up enough to make the bolt spin. So tighten her up a little more. And we'll work it back and forth. And now here is our nut and I can now thread that on and chase it around the floor by hand. I was not able to do that before, if you remember. Okay, back to assembling the base. Now that we have a functional nut and bolt. The instructions ask you to place a nylon washer and a flat washer, nylon washer. Here is your spring base. Drop that through. Drop that through. And then in my instance, adjust the camera here a little bit. I'm going to put a nylon washer. The remaining 3 flat washers. Spin our castle nut on. Use some finger pressure. And we want to tighten this down. It doesn't have to be extremely tight, but we don't want any slop or play in it. This is a 9/16 wrench, a screwdriver. So I'm just going to go hand tight with the screwdriver, not the wrench. See if, okay, well, I got lucky, but the slot in the nut and the hole in the bolt happen to line up. I can push my safety pin in, and it still moves freely. There's a little bit of resistance because it's a little snug, and that is it. The bases are, the swivel mechanism is rebuilt. Let's get on to the little glides for the feet. I came up with 2 methods or procedures to put these little glides in the bottoms of these chairs. They fit into these holes, and you get them lined up with the curvature, and this is just a rubber mallet, and you can just bop them in like that, or depending, you could put them in. They're a little hard to press in with your fingers, but what I have done as well, I just have a block of sacrificial wood so I don't scratch up the paint, and a big pair of locking pliers, and you could squeeze them in. During the course of putting these bases together, I noticed a little problem, and depending on the age of your chairs, you may run into it too. These black rubber glides that go into the bases, on my chairs before I stripped them down, I think out of the 36 of them, there might have been 4 left. The rest of them had gotten crispy over age, broken off, whatever. And the chairs were sitting just on the aluminum hoop, and they were on a concrete patio, being scuffed around and slid around on a concrete patio. And I should have done this before I took them to sandblasting, and definitely before powder coating, but I didn't think of it, didn't run into the problem. But what I'm noticing is that the holes in the base of the chairs are kind of, for lack of a better term, they're mushroomed over, but they're not outward, but rolled into the hole. So the hole is not the right diameter anymore. And what I found is I'm just using a step bit that I've got on a driver tool and just opening up, taking that little burr off the inside of the hole. And I'm not hardly putting any pressure on it. I'm just getting rid of the burr on that hole. Yes, it is removing some of the powder coat. But these are aluminum, so it's not like they're gonna start to rust. And I don't live in a saltwater environment, so I don't think they'll corrode all that much anytime soon. But it would have been nice to do this before I got them coated. So just doing that little bit, reaming out that hole, makes installing these plugs that much easier. There you go, done. Before I was fighting it a little bit, took a little more effort, but now they just bop right in. And there you have it. One reconditioned swivel base.